Alright, so this is going to be, let's see, which build challenge was this? I was attempting to go for the Omni class, defense, healing, offense buffs. Unfortunately, I'm not really able to test the offensive capability of this Cleric build. Just because it's at 216, I didn't feel like going and getting all the item wall passives or anything like that. I do think that it is capable, except for I'm not exactly attacking a normal target. The crossbow scout that I'm using to test against offensively is built, well, pretty defensively, so aside from that and me taking the wrong skill, I meant to take Firebolt, which I would be able to get the maximum version of Hellfire if this Cleric was actually 230. It's 216. But aside from that, I think it's mission accomplished. So I'm going to go over the build here real quick, why I took what I did, and remember that this is all based off of Pegasus. So I took Voltage Bolt and then level 1 Voltage Jolt to get the stun. You can swap out the Hellfire Burn if you wanted to get the AoE stun, which I might actually recommend in the long run. But given its low success rate, if you ever find yourself in some type of a one-on-one situation, I would rather take the reliable DPS of Hellfire over a chance to stun. But given that, you're going to go into the supportive tab. You'll notice that I only took the attack power. I didn't take any of the attack speed, accuracy, or anything like that. That is, I skipped the accuracy passive because of my reliable DPS with Hellfire. Attack speed kind of got nerfed a little bit in the overall gameplay. And I felt that the investment of getting the Pierce, the attack speed, the accuracy, and the weapon range just to get the additional skill power wasn't enough of a benefit. So I skipped out on all of that and I just took the raw attack power passive. I went ahead and maxed out Mystic Deflection and Mystic Guard. This will increase block rate and your offhand defense and magic defense. I maxed out Mystic Deviation. I wonder if that's supposed to be Divination. Anyway, it increases the block rate by a flat number and then a ratio based off your dexterity. And then I went ahead and took Mystic Safeguard just because the initial 20% over 5% per tier is something that I thought was much better. And I also don't need the highest rank for the Mana Shield proc because I didn't take Mana Shield. I went ahead and grabbed the 20% Dragon Skin Defense passive and the Mystic Armor maxed out for the 50% mute resistance and the defense per intelligence ratio. You also notice that I only took level 4 Salamander Flame. I did this just based off the tooltip information. It doesn't matter what level it is, it will always restore 10% max health every 10 seconds based off of a certain 15 meter range. And I went ahead and did this because I have the unique passive Summoner's Gift, which gives me heal power and the summon gauge increase, which at level 4 is exactly enough to cast 2 Salamander Flames. I also went ahead and took all of the healing spells, maxed them all, and took Healer's Touch for the additional 30%, as well as the proc that gives Cure the ability to grant 5 stacks of Healing Touch when used. I wanted that specifically because Cure is also a dispel, or rather a debuff. It'll remove 1 status down from you. Moving on, I took Purify and Sold Out. I took Sold Out specifically so if I need to mess with the enemy Cleric on an AA team, I would be able to do that and mute them, as well as having the unique Purify so that way I can AoE dispel status downs from my party if I was actually going to be playing this as a healer. Now, buff-wise, I only took the specific class buffs that are unique to the Muse class. I did this because of the way the new buff system works. Most classes in the game should have their standard class buffs. If not, then that is a small percentage that you're going to be lacking, but it's not worth the investment to get every single buff anymore based off of the Cleric's lesser scaling ratio for charm. As you can see, if I go into something that is a normal ratio, just like the rest of these, I have magic resistance 10% plus 9.12%. I have screenshots taken that I can provide in the thread for this specific video that will show that this is actually a fairly good buff for a cleric to have, strength-wise or potency-wise. So I went ahead and out of all the buffs, I took the maximum mana points, the magic resistance, the critical, enhanced damage, and all stats. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tab over to this. Actually, I'm going to show you the gear. I'm using very, very basic gear to do this. I did not have access to the 220 gear, so I went ahead and came up with this gear set. Now, I'm using some of these pieces strictly because I didn't have anything on this character when I logged it in into Pegasus, and I don't have access to getting a whole bunch of free gear, just what I can get as a base level from the Honor or Valor shops. So I have the Nature Force set. I took this for intelligence because my intelligence to defense ratio passive, as well as my maximum mana, which inadvertently increases my mana point recovery. I also gemmed it with Topaz to further increase my tanking capability and my maximum mana pool, just so that way I have more access to heals over a duration, as well as a higher mana point regeneration. The added strength benefit gives me more defense, as well as maximum health, and a couple extra points to my health recovery over time. I have the Blue Rose Captain's Eye Patch. This gives me intelligence and movement speed being very important. However, I might also swap this out, depending on the situation, to a Gloopy Mask. If there's a lot of dot damage going around, I would want the damage reduction in the new Paradigm Shift update. I have this currently gemmed for defense 5% plus 100. I probably would not be using that. I would actually be using a substat, but I don't have any item or substats on this character, so I took the Valor gem of the highest tier that I could get for that slot. I also took the Arume Order back shield. I did not gem this with an item yet, or with a gem yet. I'm not exactly sure which one I would take. I might not actually even use this back shield. I just had this because it was something that I had available. I could use my UD Fairy Wing. It has much better substats, but it does not have the PvP resistance that I was testing with. And I'm not going to swap that out now just because I don't want to ruin the current build that I'm using. You'll also notice that I'm not using a Book of Horus or the other higher level tool. I'm using the Mage Diary refined to 10. I took this just because I already had it, and I didn't have access to a Book of Horus that I felt like using. The maximum health and the intelligence is a great combination of healing extension as well as survival. And then there is the heal power gem inside of it for 4.6% plus 22. That is not the 220 gem. I think it's the tier right under 200. It's just what I currently had in that from leveling this character so many days ago. I also have an Exalted Shadow Moon Wand. It is not refined, which is probably why my damage is a little bit less than it should be at this level. However, I took this specifically because of the mana point consumption as well as the mana point recovery. Overall good PvP offense and PVM offense, as well as the availability of the substats. I took intelligence 20 and maximum MP recovery rate 10. You'll start to notice a rolling theme here that I'm using a lot of intelligence over charm, and that is so that way I can tap into defensive, offensive, and buffing with healing, given that the new charm scaling ratio for clerics is not as amazing as it is. It's only slightly better than intelligence, so I opted out for the higher survival capabilities of intelligence over charm. Moving on to the main set pieces, I took a 2-2 mix of the 200 and the 180 precious sets for the Muse class. I did this specifically for the HP from Restore effects bonus as well as the stun resistance. I felt like the 2 out of 4 set was better than the 4 out of 4 set, given that I don't particularly need the Pierce Magic or Pierce Defense for this type of a class. So in total, this gives me 20% increased health received, as well as a 60% stun resistance, and the movement speed on top of that is quite nice. Moving into my actual stats, I'm going to reapply my buffs, just so that way you can see what my buffs are based off of my own. So overall, I have 929 attack power, 500 accuracy, and like I said, this is enhanced by the fact that I actually would be having access to Hellfire for the reliable DPS for hitting things like Raiders and Scouts. Anything else doesn't really need a high amount of accuracy to hit reliably, which is where the rest of my damage would come in. I also forgot to mention that the status down, I accidentally added 2 extra points into Mana Bolt. You don't need to have it for the magic resistance sound effect. It's the same throughout all tiers, so you can actually just get that at level 1. And with my current stat setup, it gives me a 45.64% magic resistance down, which increases my attack power towards the target. I have a 10% critical rate. That's, well, almost 11% with my buff. And then I also have a critical defense rating of 100. Basic critical damage, 50%. My attacks per second is 0.82. And my PvP offense is 29%, with PvP defense 24%. Man-P cost reduction is reduced by 40%, and I have a maximum summon gauge of 80. Moving on to the better stats, I have 5,260 defense, physical defense. That is without a physical defense buff. That jumps up to about around 7,000 with a decent buff from a soldier class. And with my self buff, I have 5,200 magic defense. I also have approximately 750 dodge, which is not too bad. Most of this is coming from my stats. Block rate is at 44.5%. I felt that was pretty close to what a knight would normally have. My block physical amount is 679, with my block magic amount being approximately 1,400. My block physical amount would be higher. The gem I actually wanted to use was the offhand physical defense for my shield. Unfortunately, I just didn't have that available to me. It would pump it up to about around 1,000. I also have approximately 750 movement speed. Again, that is without a buff. That jumps up to about around 900 to 950 with a decent Raider buff. Okay, now that covers the actual stats, the build, the setup, and everything, I'm going to show you the class that I'm using to attack myself. This is a crossbow scout at 230. I have a lot of offensive capability built into this class. I'm using a lava ring with dexterity 20, 30 attack power. That is in all slots. Leprechaun beard with enhanced damage 25. I'm using the luminous Spinosaur 2 out of 4 set for skill power and harmful effect. And then I'm also using the chivalrous Spinosaur suit for melee attack power, maximum health. This is mostly, I picked this mostly for survival in this class, but we'll get into that later. Using a Jabberwock, this is entirely a defensive item. I'm also using a Doctor's Back Arms with no substats. And then I'm using a Luminous 6-stick bowgun without refinements with the critical damage enhancement gem, as well as a body bracing of protection paradigm rune, rank 100. It's a max. I took this for PvP resistance, critical defense, etc., etc. Overall, this class has 1,350 attack power. My strongest attacking skill is 290% plus 1,293. This is a powerhouse hitter on skill damage, has 1,000 accuracy, a 10% critical rate, which I do believe I might have a critical potion to enhance that. Yes, I do. And I can't use my damage enhancement potion. So we're going to go ahead and bump that up to a 30%. I have 30% pierce physical defense, which is going to reduce my cleric's defense by approximately 2,500. Attacks per second, I won't be using auto attacks for this. And the other PvP offense stat, is the only other offensive stat this character has, is at 40%. The reason that is so high is because I am using as many offensive PvP items that I can get my hands on. I actually found out that Doctor's Back Arm is stronger than the Junon Order Back Shield, percentage-wise, versus its flat attack power amount. So I went ahead and skipped that. Also, looking into the clan skill tab, I temporarily bumped up and turned on the PvP offense by 10%. So this is giving me a 40% PvP offense, while my Cleric simply has the semi-default 24%. So what I'm going to do here is I already have out my 2 Salamander Flames, and for the large part I'm going to be relying on my self-heals and periodically either Integrity or Heavenly Grace, and I'm going to make sure that I always keep my Healer's Touch stacks at maximum. Again, this is a 230 character versus a 216. The offensive capability of this scout is significantly higher based on gear and stat ratings and stat weights compared to the Cleric. But I'm going to show you how tanky this build is by itself without most defensive buffs orientated towards this scout. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start off with a cure and a damage reduction. And I'm going to start laying into this Cleric as hard as I can. And then I'm going to throw on just a restore. And then I'm going to throw on the Integrity. And I'm just going to keep laying into this Cleric as much as this class is capable of. Went ahead and threw on the party heal over time effect. And I'm just going to keep going after this Cleric as hard as I can. Go ahead and throw on restore. And the 50% damage reduction Integrity. It's the unique Integrity. And anybody who knows or has played on Pegasus recently that has fought this crossbow scout knows that this thing will take out most people fairly quickly. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to wait for my stuns to come off of cooldown, and I'm going to try to proc the 2 stuns. And as you can see, I muted my scout. That's just for balance testing purposes. Go ahead and throw on that Integrity again. My stuns are almost off of cooldown. I'm going to refresh that, throw on 1 hot here, repump that, and now I'm going to lay into it with hopefully a double stun. First stun failed, second stun failed. That is the Precious set doing its job with the 60% stun resistance, which is precisely why I wanted to choose that, as well as it giving me more health, which does increase my Cleric's Salamander Flame healing received as well. So overall, I am quite stable with this build. I like it. And like I said, unfortunately, I can't really test the offensive capability of this Cleric just because of the gear that it only had access to at a base level. And it wouldn't do much good to really test anything else. I might actually even be able to get this guy to help me out. Let's see if he'd be willing to shoot my Cleric. I don't think he's gonna take a bite at it. Anyway, that is the build. For a 216 in completely clean gear across the board, it does a very nice job. Overall, I'm quite satisfied. And for the type of build it is and level, I mean, I couldn't ask for more. It has a good stun resistance. It has good mute resistance. It has a high amount of HP received. So I believe I'm going to cut this video here. Hopefully this answered the Omni build request made by Angel, I believe it was. Until next time. Thanks, guys.